Hi everyone, welcome back. I think by now many of you have seen the Jim Lil video on microphones or preamps, and there's this whole discussion going on right now in the space on whether you should buy expensive gear or if it's a complete waste of your money and your time. And so I thought I would add my 2 cents to the whole discussion and talk about why maybe it still makes sense to actually buy expensive gear, and then obviously also the more objective things or aspects that might make buying gear completely worthless. So if we look at gear in general, there's sort of 4 different aspects to gear that I think can make it worthwhile and can also make it a complete waste of your money. And if we just get let's say the objective part out of the way first, if we talk about, let's say, the physics of buying gear, or the laws of nature, if you will, like what does that say about buying gear? You know, like what technical reason might there be to buy an expensive EQ or to buy an expensive mic preamp? And the honest answer is that the physics is not on your side in this case, as you saw in all those videos. Technically speaking, there's not much leverage you can gain by spending those extra bucks. Sure, you might get better reliability, support, and all those things. But if you just look at the results you can accomplish, typically we are at a stage, technology-wise, that the difference that you might actually accomplish on an engineering level are not really noticeable in the end product. So if we were to summarize on the physics side of things, results are more or less the same as with cheaper gear. What else can we say? You're probably wasting your money. And then one other important aspect when you talk about the let's say technical aspects of expensive gear is that typically other aspects in your environment, for example your room acoustics, have a way more profound impact than any of the slight nuances you might notice when comparing a cheaper mic preamp to a more expensive mic preamp. So I've seen countless studio tours of famous studios with very experienced engineers, and they talk about all these nuances and little flavors and different vibes of their gear. And then I look at their room, and sure, it's treated, but not to an extent where you would really say this is, you know, within the bounds of a place where you can make objective judgment or an objective assessment of what you actually have at hand and what might let you hear the difference between those different types of gear. So if we summarize that, you could say acoustics matter way more. So actually I have an anecdote for this myself. My dad, he bought very expensive speakers for his living room. You know, he's also an audiophile to some extent. And at the time I had a very high-end digital to analog converter. And he at the time was just streaming audio directly from the iPads through a normal audio jack. You know, obviously the digital to analog converter in the iPad is, you know, not a high quality converter. It probably costs cents to manufacture, but that was how he was listening to music on his super expensive hi-fi speakers. And then the idea was, let's bring in my mastering converter and try to see if there's a difference, because surely if your converter costs thousands of dollars, there must be some perceivable difference in the audio quality. As it turns out, we weren't able to hear any difference, no matter how long we tried to A/B and no matter what testing strategy we used, simply because the acoustics in my dad's living room were super bad, right? It was a perfect cube, there was no treatment, it was all very echoey, so there was no way you could tell the difference between those converters. And obviously most studios are treated to a better extent than my dad's living room, but the point still stands that most of the time, most studios I've been to, even studios of very well-known engineers, they're usually not treated to an extent where actually those little nuances make enough of a difference that you could tell. So yeah, that's the physics side of things. You can't really accomplish much more with those devices, in my opinion, from my experience. You're probably wasting your money, and your acoustics matter way more than any of the differences you could accomplish with that type of gear. Now, if we look at other aspects, maybe a weaker argument for why you might want to buy expensive gear is status, right? So let's say you invite friends over to produce your next hit song. Obviously, if you can show off your API preamp or your Neve console, then that automatically kind of puts you on a little pedestal, and you feel like you may be more accomplished or you know more about audio than your peers because you are able to afford this type of gear. And I've also seen it before where people with very poor skills buy all this expensive gear as sort of a way to buy themselves status and credibility. Because obviously if someone has all that gear, then surely they must be able to produce some sort of quality audio, right? And then also it obviously associates you with certain icons or legends in the industry. If you can say that this is the same preamp that this famous artist recorded through, then sort of, I don't know, you create that association that maybe you're able to accomplish the same output as that artist. So if we were to summarize this, you could say, buy yourself street credit, associate yourself with legends, that type of stuff. So that's why you might want to buy gear for status reasons. Arguably a very poor long-term reason to buy expensive gear. But regardless, for some people, maybe that's the primary reason to get into expensive gear. Now, I think now we're coming into the second strongest argument why you might want to buy expensive gear. And I think that is some sort of caretaking or well-being aspect. I'm just going to call it well-being. So, people get dogs and pets and all sorts of hobbies to have a creative outlet, to regulate their emotions, that type of stuff. And I think the same thing is true for expensive audio gear. You like to have something that you can take care of. You like something that you can control, something that creates a certain aesthetic at home. And I think that is something where gear, especially analog gear, in those pretty racks can really shine. It just looks cool, and it makes you feel like you have something that is a precious possession. So it sort of adds to your well-being. You just come home and you play with the knobs, and I don't know, you clean your rack, and you feel like somehow emotionally this feels good, right? So let's say have control, aesthetics are important, and then take care of your treasures. And then even if you've checked off all these boxes, there's still one more reason, which I think is actually the most prominent reason why you might want to buy expensive gear, and that is the whole projection thing. I couldn't come up with a better term for it. But one more reason why you might want to buy gear is because you can project certain things onto it. And that's obviously, a whole rabbit hole we can dig into. But I think if I had to narrow it down why people buy expensive gear and what they project onto it, it usually comes down to that it makes them feel like they're more confident and it enables them to do something, right? So typical example, all the music you've produced before, or all the vocal takes you've recorded before, they all sound pretty bad. And now you see this shiny preamp online with all this legacy and all the famous artists that have recorded through that preamp. And suddenly you feel like, if I buy that preamp, I don't limit myself to the poor performances I've done before. I can now record at the same level as all these famous artists. So that is one projection, right? So you could say it's like an unlocker of potential, because you suddenly feel like you've reached a new level, although it obviously doesn't influence your skills at all. And then another thing, which I think more than the, let's say, esoteric potential aspect, is the fact that it can actually unlock new ways of listening to things, or it can somehow draw you out of your limited box of thinking. So for example, when I was working in mastering, I had plenty of outboard gear. I had probably spent several thousands, 10,000s on different EQs and compressors. And objectively speaking, my mastering didn't get any better from using all that gear. But what did happen was, because there were different knob arrangements, because I compared what I did through the analog gear to what I did before in the box, I started questioning what I did before. I started listening to things again from a fresh perspective. And that can be very productive, because it sort of makes you reflect and helps you get out of your old habits, right? If you use the same plugin all the time, you tend to have your favorite preset, you tend to dial in the same settings. And if you have a new piece of gear, you're like, oh, I don't have my preferred way of working with this type of gear yet. so I'm just going to start tweaking knobs, and it opens your mind to different approaches to solving certain audio issues, right? So it doesn't only make you feel like it unlocks potential in you, but it also helps you gain a new perspective on your craft. And I think this whole projection thing is the most prominent, as I said, or the most common reason people actually buy gear. It's because it makes them feel like they can escape their old workflow, they can try something new, they get a new perspective on what they've done before, at least in my experience. And if you now ask the question again, should you buy expensive audio gear or not? From a physics standpoint, obviously, all of what this new box probably does is something you could already accomplish before. But if you lean more into the projection direction, then you could argue maybe it actually makes sense to get that box because it instills a feeling, a vibe in you. And I think that's what many people refer to when they talk about their gear and they do their studio tours. It gives them a certain feeling, and that, I assume, makes them work differently, maybe more effectively, maybe arguably better in some cases. And that then, in their eyes at least, justifies buying that expensive gear. But regardless, I think this is obviously something that also came across in all these discussions online, is that no piece of gear is going to replace your skills. So if you have solid skills, you can probably accomplish whatever you want to accomplish with very basic gear. And if you have no skills, even the most expensive gear is not going to compensate for that and suddenly give you superpowers. Obviously, we at Masterchannel, we also look at this, and for us on the producer side of things, in the sense that, you know, other people are the consumers of Masterchannel and we build the software. All these aspects also matter, because from a physics standpoint, you know, you can make objective tests and you can say Masterchannel solves technical issues in the mix. It's an objectively good master. But what we've also realized is that most of the time that doesn't really matter, because people don't really care about technical correctness. They want to feel something about the master, and even if they maybe get a worse master from an engineer, they still feel like, you know, it gives them more well-being, or and that engineer had a certain status that Masterchannel doesn't have, and so they feel better about that master. And so for us, it's also a very fine line to communicate objectively and say this is what the system does, but then at the same time also inspire people and give them some sort of projection when they read about Masterchannel, and tell them with Masterchannel you can accomplish this or you can accomplish that because it solves all these issues. And that's, you know, that's hard to do, because it easily goes into overselling territory, where you promise people that with Masterchannel you can become the next superstar, or suddenly with Masterchannel all your music is going to sound good. Although obviously at the end of the day it just objectively fixes technical problems, and if your music was pretty bad before, it's not going to be great after mastering. So one concrete example in our case is our collaboration with Wez Clarke. If you look at the physics or the technical details of that product, in most of the cases the result you get from Wez Clarke is not that different, but what matters is that he has signed off on the results that engine produces. And that obviously, the safety, the projection that, oh, this is something that has the status attached of Wez Clarke, and that gives me the feeling of security that this is not just another algorithm, but this is something that was approved by a Grammy-winning engineer, right? So the same way you as a consumer think about all this, and you're really unsure if you should make that purchase, the same way we, as somebody who builds audio products, also thinks about it. And we try to strike a balance that makes it appealing, but then also still objective and you know, something we don't need to feel guilty about. So yeah, anyway, these are my thoughts on expensive gear, the whole esoteric discussion surrounding it, mastering, and how that plays into it. I'd be curious what your experience is, if you have regretted any purchases in the past, if you're considering a purchase, if this whole discussion has flipped your perspective. Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories. And as always, happy mastering.